Zizhi Tongjian Chronicles of Han 3. This video stays true to the original text, featuring readings in both classical and vernacular Chinese or English. This historical narrative commences in the ancient year of Zizhi and concludes in the year of Xianqiu, spanning a total of 3 turbulent years of destiny. In the 5th year of the middle reign of Emperor Gaozu, 202 BC, under the celestial sign of Zizhi. In the chilling 10th month of winter, the king of Han pursued Xiang Yu to Guling, having coordinated with King Han Xian of Qi and Chancellor Ping Yu of Wei to converge and launch a combined assault on the Chu forces. But Han Xian and Ping Yu failed to arrive. Seized by this opportunity, the Chu army struck the Han forces and inflicted a crushing defeat upon them. The king of Han retreated behind fortified walls for defense and said to Zhang Liang, "The lords do not follow my lead. What shall I do?" Zhang Liang replied, "The Chu forces are on the verge of collapse, yet those 2 men have not been granted their own territories. It is only natural that they did not arrive. If your majesty can share the empire with them, you can bring them here instantly." The establishment of Han Xian as king of Qi was not your original intention, and thus Han Xian himself feels insecure in his position. Ping Yu originally pacified the lands of Liang. Initially, because of Wei Bao, you only appointed him chancellor. Now that Wei Bao is dead, Ping Yu also aspires to be a king, yet you have not finalized his status. If you can now take the territory from north of Suiyang to Guqing and grant it all to Ping Yu as his kingdom, and grant the lands from Qin eastward to the sea to King Han Xian of Qi. Han Xian's home is in Chu, and his heart desires to reclaim his ancestral lands. If you can relinquish these lands to promise them to these 2 men, so they fight for their own interests, then Chu will be easily defeated." The king of Han followed his advice. Consequently, Han Xian and Ping Yu both led their troops to join him. In the 11th month, Lu Jia crossed the Huai River to the south, besieged Shouchuan, and sent men to entice the Chu Grand Marshal, Zhou Yin, to defect. Zhou Yin defected from Chu. Using Shu as a base, he captured Lu, mobilized the troops of Zheojiang to welcome Qingbu, and simultaneously overran Qingfu, eventually joining forces with Lu Jia. In the 12th month, King Xiang arrived at Gaixia. His troops were few and his food supplies exhausted. Defeated in battle with the Han forces, he retreated behind his fortifications. The Han army and the forces of the various lords surrounded him in multiple layers. In the night, King Xiang heard the songs of Chu rising from the Han camps on all sides. Greatly alarmed, he said, "Has Han already taken all of Chu? How can there be so many Chu men among them?" He rose in the night and drank within his tent. Singing with tragic passion and noble fervor, he shed several lines of tears. All his attendants wept, and none could bear to look up at him. Then King Xiang mounted his prize steed, named Jue. Over 800 valiant warriors on horseback followed under his command. Under cover of night, they broke through the encirclement and galloped southward. At dawn, the Han army finally realized what had happened and ordered the cavalry general Guaning to pursue him with 5,000 horsemen. By the time King Xiang crossed the Huai River, barely over 100 of his followers were still able to keep up with him. Upon reaching Yinling, they lost their way. He asked an old farmer for directions. The farmer deceived him, saying, "Go left." Going left, they became mired in a great marsh, which allowed the Han forces to catch up with them. King Xiang then led his troops eastward. By the time they reached Dongqing, only 28 horsemen remained. With several thousand Han cavalry in pursuit, King Xiang realized he could not escape. He said to his horsemen, "It has been 8 years since I first raised my troops. In over 70 battles I have personally fought, I was never once defeated, and thus I came to dominate the world. Yet now I am finally trapped here. This is heaven destroying me, not a fault in my generalship. Today, since death is certain, I wish to fight an exhilarating battle for you all. I will surely break their lines, slay their generals, and tear down their banners, winning 3 victories over them. So that you may all know it is heaven that destroys me, and not a failure in my art of war. He then divided his horsemen into 4 squads, facing 4 different directions. The Han forces surrounded them in many layers. King Xiang said to his horsemen, I shall take one of their generals for you. He ordered the horsemen on all sides to charge down and agreed to rendezvous at 3 separate locations on the eastern side of the hill. Then King Xiang gave a mighty shout and charged down. The Han troops scattered like grass before the wind, and he duly slew 1 Han general. At that moment, the Han cavalryman Yang Shi was pursuing King Xiang. King Xiang glared at him and bellowed. Yang Shi was so terrified that both he and his horse retreated several li in shock. King Xiang joined his horsemen at the 3 locations. Not knowing which group King Xiang was in, the Han army divided into 3 units and surrounded them once more. King Xiang then charged out again, slaying another Han colonel and killing scores of men. When he regrouped his horsemen, he found he had lost only 2 of them. He then said to his horsemen, What do you think? The horsemen all prostrated themselves and said, It is exactly as your majesty said. Then King Xiang wished to cross the Yangtze River to the east at Wujiang. The local station master had moored a boat and was waiting for him. The station master said to King Xiang, Though Jiangdong is small, it covers 1,000 square li and has hundreds of thousands of people, enough for you to rule as a king. I beg your majesty to cross quickly. Currently only I have a boat. When the Han army arrives, they will have no means of crossing. King Xiang laughed and said, If heaven is destroying me, why should I cross? Furthermore, I, Xiang Ji, crossed the river to the west with 8,000 ewes from Jiangdong, and now not a single one has returned. Even if the elders of Jiangdong took pity on me and made me their king, how could I look them in the eye? Even if they said nothing, would I not feel the shame in my own heart? He then gave his steed Zhui to the station master, and ordered his men to dismount and fight on foot with short-range weapons. By himself, Xiang Ji killed several hundred Han soldiers, while his own body sustained over a dozen wounds. Looking back, he saw the Han cavalry marshal Lu Matong and said, Are you not my old friend? Lu Matong faced him, then pointed him out to the cavalry officer Wang Yi, saying, This is King Xiang. King Xiang said, I have heard the Han king has offered a reward of 1,000 pieces of gold, and a fief of 10,000 households for my head. Let me do you this favor. Thereupon, he cut his throat and died. Wang Yi took his head. The other horsemen trampled one another, struggling over the body of King Xiang, and several dozen men were killed in the fray. In the end, Yang Shi, Lu Matong, and the officers Lu Xing and Yang Wu each obtained a part of his body. The 5 men brought the parts of his body together and confirmed they were his. Consequently, the promised households were divided among them, and all 5 were enfeoffed as marquises. The entire land of Chu was pacified except for Lu, which would not surrender. The king of Han led the imperial forces, intending to massacre the people of Lu. Upon arriving beneath the city walls, the sound of music and chanting could still be heard from within. Because they were a people of ritual and righteousness, willing to die for their lord, the Han king held up Xiang Yu's head to show the elders of Lu, and only then did they surrender. The king of Han buried King Xiang at Guqing with the honors due to a duke of Lu. He personally observed the mourning rites, wept for him, and then departed. None of the members of the Xiang clan were executed. He enfeoffed Xiang Bo and 3 others as marquises and bestowed upon them the imperial surname, Lu. All the common people who had been displaced in Chu were returned to their homes. The grand historian Sima Qian remarked, Xiang Yu rose from the humble fields, and in just 3 years, he led the 5 feudal lords to destroy the Qin dynasty. He partitioned the empire to enfeoff kings and marquises, with all executive decrees originating from him alone. Although his high position did not last until the end, such a figure has never been seen since ancient times. But when Xiang Yu turned his back on the strategic Guanzhong to return to his beloved Chu, and exiled the righteous emperor to establish himself as the supreme ruler, it became impossible for him to complain when the lords rebelled against him. He boasted of his own achievements, relied solely on his own limited cunning instead of learning from the past, and claimed to be building a hegemonic empire by trying to manage the world through pure military force. In 5 years, his state eventually perished, and he himself died at Dongqing. Yet he remained unawakened and failed to blame himself, instead claiming, "It is heaven that destroys me, not a fault in my military command. Is this not utterly preposterous?" Yan Xiong's model sayings, records, someone asked. When Xiang Yu was defeated at Gaixia and about to die, he said, "It is heaven." Is this believable? The reply was, the Han leader harnessed the collective wisdom of many, which in turn mobilized the collective strength of many. The Chu leader loathed the wisdom of others and thus exhausted his own strength. He who harnesses others' strength conquers. He who exhausts his own strength loses. What has heaven to do with it? The king of Han returned and, upon reaching Dingtao, galloped into the camp of Han Xian, king of Qi, and seized command of his army. Gong Wei, king of Linjiang, refused to surrender. Lu Bang sent Lu Wan and Lu Jia to attack and capture him. In the first month of spring, the king of Han reassigned Han Xian, king of Qi, as king of Chu, ruling over Huaibei with his capital at Xiapi. He enfeoffed Ping Yu, the chancellor of Wei and marquis of Jianqing, as king of Liang, to rule over the former lands of Wei with his capital at Dingtao. The decree stated, "The troops have not been able to rest for 8 years, and the people have suffered greatly alongside them. Now that the world is settled, let there be a general amnesty for all crimes below the death penalty." All the vassal kings submitted memorials requesting that the king of Han be honored as emperor. On the day of Jiawu in the 2nd month, the king ascended the throne as emperor on the northern bank of the Xi River. He retitled the queen as empress and the heir apparent as imperial crown prince. He posthumously honored his late mother as Lady Xiaoling. The imperial decree said, "The former king of Hengshan, Wu Rui, led the troops of the Baiwa to assist the feudal lords in punishing the tyrannical Qin, achieving great merit. The lords had established him as a king, but Xiang Yu seized his lands and reduced him to being called the Lord of Fan. Therefore, let Wu Rui be appointed king of Changsha." It further stated, "The former king of Yu, Wu Zhu, whose family for generations maintained the ancestral sacrifices of Yu, Qin seized his lands, causing the sacrifices to his ancestors to cease. When the lords attacked Qin, Wu Zhu personally led the troops of Minzhong to assist in destroying Qin, yet Xiang Yu deposed him and refused to establish him as king. Now I appoint him king of Minwei, to rule over the lands of Minzhong." The emperor established his capital in the west at Luoyang. In the 5th month of summer, the soldiers were all dismissed and sent back to their homes. The decree stated, "Among the people, some previously gathered for protection in the mountains and marshes, and their names were not recorded in the registers. Now that the world is settled, let each return to their own county, restore their former titles, lands, and residences." The officials should use the laws and ethics to instruct them and must not whip or humiliate the officers and soldiers. Those with the rank of 7th Grand Master or above shall be granted the income from their fiefs. Those below that rank shall be exempt from taxes and labor services for themselves and their households. The emperor held a banquet at the southern palace in Luoyang and said, Marquises and generals, do not hide anything from me, speak your true thoughts. Why was I able to gain the empire? And why did the house of Xiang lose the empire? Gao Qi and Wang Ling replied, Your Majesty sent people to attack cities and seize territory, and then you granted those lands to them, sharing the benefits with the whole world. Xiang Yu was not like this. He envied those with merit and suspected those with talent. That is why he lost the empire. The emperor said, You know the first part, but you do not know the second. In calculating strategies within the command tend to determine victory 1,000 miles away, I am not as good as Zhang Liang. In stabilizing the state, comforting the people, and providing supplies and provisions so the supply lines are never cut, I am not as good as Xiao He. In commanding a host of 1,000,000 men, winning every battle and capturing every target, I am not as good as Han Xian. All three are heroes among men, and I was able to employ them. That is why I gained the empire. Xiang Yu had only one Fanzeng and yet could not employ him. That is why he was captured by me. The ministers were all pleased and convinced. When Han Xian arrived in Chu, he summoned the washerwoman and bestowed 1,000 pieces of gold upon her. He also summoned the youth who had humiliated him by making him crawl through his legs and appointed him as a lieutenant. He told his generals and ministers, This man is a brave man. When he was humiliating me, was I really incapable of killing him? Killing him would have brought me no fame, so I endured it to achieve what I have today. After Pingyu accepted the fiefdom from Han, Tianheng feared execution and led his followers, numbering over 500, into the sea to live on an island. The emperor believed that since Tianheng and his brothers had originally pacified the Qi lands, many worthies of Qi remained loyal to them. If they were not captured now while at sea, he feared they would cause trouble in the future. Thus, he sent an envoy to pardon Tianheng's crimes and summon him to court. Tianheng declined, saying, I boiled your Majesty's envoy Li Ji to death, and now I hear his brother Li Shang is a Han general. I am terrified and dare not accept the edict. I beg to remain a commoner on this island. The envoy returned and reported this. The emperor then ordered the commandant of the guard, Li Shang, When the king of Qi, Tianheng, arrives, anyone who dares to harm him or his men will have their entire clan executed. He then sent another envoy with a tally to inform Tianheng of the order given to Li Shang, saying, If Tianheng comes, he will be made a king at best, or at least a marquis. But if he does not come, I shall mobilize troops to execute him. Tianheng then set out for Luoyang with 2 of his retainers in a relay carriage. When they were 30 li from Luoyang, they arrived at the postal station of Shixiang. Tianheng said to the envoy, When a subject visits the Son of Heaven, he should first bathe and cleanse himself. He stayed there and said to his retainers, Originally, both the king of Han and I sat facing south, calling ourselves the Lonely One. Now the king of Han is the emperor, while I am a fugitive captive. To serve him facing north is a humiliation that has already gone too far. Moreover, I boiled his brother alive, yet now I must serve the same master side by side with the younger brother. Even if he dares not touch me for fear of the emperor's decree, should I not feel shame in my own heart? Furthermore, the reason His Majesty wants to see me is nothing more than to take a look at my face. If I cut off my head now and race it over these 30 li, my features will not yet have decayed, and I will still be fit to be seen. Thereupon, he cut his own throat and ordered his retainers to carry his head and gallop with the envoy to present it to the emperor. The emperor sighed. Alas! To rise from commoner status and for 3 brothers to all become kings, were they not truly worthy men? He shed tears for him and appointed the 2 retainers as colonels. He dispatched 2,000 soldiers to bury him with the honors due to a king. After the burial, the 2 retainers dug holes beside his tomb and both cut their throats to follow him into the afterlife. The emperor was greatly shocked to hear this. Believing that all of Tianheng's retainers were worthy men, and noting that 500 remained on the island, he sent an envoy to summon them. When they arrived and heard that Tianheng was dead, they all committed suicide as well. Earlier, Jibu, a man of Chu, served as a general under Xiang Yu and had frequently cornered and humiliated the emperor. After Xiang Yu was destroyed, the emperor offered a reward of 1,000 pieces of gold for Jibu's capture, decreeing that anyone who dared to harbor him would have their entire clan executed. Jibu then shaved his head, wore an iron collar as a slave, and sold himself to Zhu Jia. Zhu Jia knew in his heart that he was Jibu, so he bought him and placed him in his farmhouse. He personally went to Luoyang to see Lord Tang and argued, "What crime has Jibu committed? A subject serves his master, it is merely his duty. Can all of Xiang Yu's subjects be executed? Now that the emperor has just gained the world, to seek one man over a personal grudge shows how narrow his mind is. Furthermore, given Jibu's talent, if the Han pursues him too urgently, he will surely flee north to the Xiongnu or south to the Yu. To resent a brave man and thus assist a rival state is exactly why Wu Zizhi whipped the grave of King Ping of Chu. Why do you not take an opportunity to speak to the emperor on his behalf?" Lord Ting waited for an opportunity to speak to the emperor, following Zhu Jia's advice exactly. The emperor then pardoned Jibu, summoned him, and appointed him as a gentleman of the palace. After this, Zhu Jia never saw him again. Jibu's maternal brother, Ding Gong, also served as a general under Xiang Yu and had chased and cornered the emperor west of Pengcheng. As they fought at close quarters and the situation grew dire, the emperor looked back and said to Ding Gong, "Should 2 worthy men like us really cause each other such distress?" Ding Gong then led his troops back. When King Xiang was destroyed, Ding Gong went to visit the emperor. The emperor had Ding Gong paraded through the army, saying, "Ding Gong was a disloyal subject to King Xiang. He is the one who caused King Xiang to lose the empire." He then executed him, saying, "Let this be a lesson to all future subjects not to follow Ding Gong's example." Your servant Sima Guan says, since the emperor rose from Feng and Pei, he has gathered heroes, recruited fugitives, and accepted defectors on many occasions. Why then, after ascending the throne, did only Ding Gong suffer execution for disloyalty? This is because the circumstances of conquering an empire are different from those of preserving one. When rival heroes contend, the people have no settled master, it is only fitting to accept whoever comes. But once one is the exalted Son of Heaven, everyone within the 4 seas becomes a subject. If righteousness and propriety are not clearly demonstrated, and subjects are allowed to harbor duplicity for the sake of great profit, how can the state enjoy long-term peace? Therefore, he judged based on great principles, making it clear to the world that there is no place for a disloyal subject. As for those who act out of private interest to form personal bonds, even if they save one's life, they cannot be spared because of the higher principle. By executing one man, he caused millions to fear. Was his foresight not deep and far-reaching? It is only fitting that his descendants enjoyed the mandate of heaven for over 400 years. Lu Jing, a man of Qi on his way to military service in Longxi, passed through Luoyang. He removed the pulling bar of his cart, donned his sheepskin coat, and requested an audience with the emperor through General Yu, a fellow countryman from Qi. General Yu wished to give him fine clothing, but Lu Jing said, "If I normally wore silk, I would wear silk to the audience. If I wear coarse cloth, I will wear coarse cloth to the audience. I would never dare to change my attire just for this occasion." Consequently, General Yu went in to speak with the emperor, who then summoned Lu Jing and questioned him. Lu Jing asked, "Your Majesty has established the capital at Luoyang. Do you intend to rival the Zhou dynasty in its glory?" The emperor replied, "Indeed." Lu Jing continued, "The way your Majesty gained the empire is quite different from that of the Zhou. The ancestors of the Zhou, starting from Huji's enfeoffment at Tai, accumulated virtue and good deeds for over 10 generations. By the time of Kings Tai, Ji, Wen, and Wu, the feudal lords naturally gathered around them, and they eventually overthrew the Yin to become the sons of heaven. When King Qing ascended the throne, Duke Zhou assisted him in constructing Loi, believing it to be the center of the world, where the distance for lords from all directions to pay tribute would be equal. With virtue, it is easy to rule from Luoyang; without virtue, it is easy to perish there. Therefore, during the Zhou's prime, the world was in harmony, and the lords and foreign tribes all submitted, faithfully paying their tributes. But when the Zhou declined, none of the lords came to court, and the Zhou could no longer control them. This was not just because their virtue had waned, but because their strategic position was weak. Now your Majesty rose from Feng and Pei, swept through Shu and Han, and pacified the 3 Qing regions. You fought Xiangyu between Xingyang and Qinggao, engaging in 70 major battles and 40 minor ones. This caused the people of the world to be slaughtered, their remains scattered on the ground. The bones of fathers and sons were left exposed in the fields in numbers beyond count. The sound of weeping has not yet ceased, and those wounded have not yet recovered. If you wish to rival the prosperity of the reigns of Kings Qing and Kang, I personally believe the two situations are not comparable. Moreover, the land of Qin is sheltered by mountains and girded by the river, with 4 major passes serving as natural fortresses. Should a crisis arise suddenly, 1,000,000 soldiers can be assembled instantly. Relying on the old foundations of Qin, it possesses extremely rich and fertile soil. It is what is known as a land of abundance. If your Majesty enters the passes and makes it your capital, even if the regions east of the mountains fall into chaos, the old lands of Qin can be preserved as your own. In a fight, if you do not seize the opponent's throat and strike them on the back, you cannot ensure a complete victory. Now your Majesty occupies the old lands of Qin. This is also seizing the world by the throat and striking its back. The emperor consulted his ministers. Most of them were from the eastern regions, and they vied to speak. The Zhou ruled for centuries, but the Qin perished in its 2nd generation. They continued, Luoyang has Qinggao to the east, and the mountains of Shao and Mian to the west. It backs onto the river and faces the Yi and Luo rivers. Its natural defenses are also sufficient to rely upon. The emperor then asked Zhang Liang. Zhang Liang said, Although Luoyang has these defenses, its interior is small, not exceeding a few hundred li. The soil is poor, and it is vulnerable to attack from all 4 sides. This is not a land for strategic military operations. Guanzhong is flanked by the Shao Mountains and Hanga Pass to the east, and by Longshan and Shu to the west, possessing 1,000 li of fertile plains. To the south, there is the richness of Ba and Shu; to the north, the advantages of the northern pastures. With 3 sides blocked for defense, you can focus solely on one side to the east to control the feudal lords. When the lords are stable, the Yellow and Wei rivers can transport goods from across the empire westward to supply the capital. Should the lords rebel, you can move downstream, which is sufficient for rapid deployment and supply. This is what is called a thousand-li fortress of gold, a true land of abundance. Lu Jing's suggestion is correct. The emperor set out westward that very day, establishing the capital at Chang'an. He appointed Lu Jing as a gentleman of the palace, gave him the title Lord Fengchun, and bestowed the imperial surname Lu upon him. Zhang Liang had always been sickly. After following the emperor into the passes, he practiced Taoist breathing and guiding techniques, fasted from grains, and kept his doors closed, saying, "My family served as ministers to Han for generations. When Han was destroyed, I did not spare a fortune of 10,000 pieces of gold to seek vengeance against the powerful Qin on behalf of Han, shaking the world. Now, using only my tongue, I have become a tutor to the emperor and been enfeoffed as a marquis of 10,000 households. This is the pinnacle for a commoner. For me, it is enough. I wish to abandon worldly affairs and simply wander with Zhisongzi. Your servant Sima Guang says that life is followed by death is as inevitable as night giving way to dawn. From ancient times to the present, there has never truly been anyone who stood apart and existed forever." With Zhang Liang's clarity of mind and understanding of principles, he certainly knew that tales of immortals were mere fabrications. Yet his desire to wander with Zhisongzi was a testament to his intelligence. The intersection of great merit and fame is the most difficult position for a subject to navigate. Among those praised by the High Emperor, there were only the three heroes. Han Xian was executed and his clan exterminated, and Xiao He was imprisoned. Was this not because they remained at the peak of their success without knowing when to stop? Therefore, Zhang Liang took refuge in immortality, abandoning worldly matters and treating fame and merit as external things. Disregarding honor and profit, he was the true embodiment of the phrase, "A wise man preserves himself." In the 6th month, on the day of Rinchen, a general amnesty was granted throughout the empire. In the autumn, in the 7th month, Zhang Tu, the king of Yan, rebelled. The emperor personally led the expedition against him. King Jing of Zhao, Zhang Er, and King Wen of Changsha, Wu Rui, both passed away. In the 9th month, the Han forces captured the rebellious king of Yan, Zhang Tu. On the day of Renzi, the emperor appointed the Grand Commandant and Marquis of Chang'an, Lu Wan, as the king of Yan. Lu Wan's family lived in the same neighborhood as the emperor's, and Lu Wan was born on the very same day as the emperor. The emperor favored and trusted Lu Wan so much that no other minister dared hope for such treatment, hence his special appointment as king. Li Ji, a former general of Xiangyu, rebelled, and the emperor personally led his forces to crush the rebellion. In the leap month of the 9th month, the construction of the Chang'o Palace began. Zhongli Mei, a prominent general under King Xiang, had long maintained a close personal friendship with Han Xian, the king of Chu. After the death of King Xiang, Zhongli Mei fled and eventually sought refuge with Han Xian. The king of Han harbored a grudge against Mei. Upon hearing he was in Chu, he issued an imperial decree ordering Han Xian to arrest him. When Han Xian first arrived in his kingdom, he toured the counties and towns, surrounded by grand military displays during his travels. In the 6th year of the reign of Emperor Gaozu, 201 BC, the year of Gunzi. In the 10th month of winter, someone submitted a secret memorial accusing Han Xian, the king of Chu, of rebellion. The emperor consulted his generals, and they all exclaimed, "Dispatch the troops immediately and bury that brat alive!" The emperor remained silent, and then consulted the cunning strategist Chen Ping. Chen Ping asked, "Someone wrote to say Han Xian is rebelling. Does Han Xian know about this?" The emperor replied, "He does not." Chen Ping asked, How do your Majesty's elite troops compare with those of Chu? The Emperor said. They cannot surpass them. Ping asked. Among your Majesty's generals, is there anyone whose leadership in war surpasses Han Xian's? The Emperor said. None can match him. Ping said. Since your troops are not as elite and your generals are inferior, raising an army to attack him would be forcing him into a battle. I privately fear for your Majesty's safety. The Emperor asked. Then what shall we do? Ping said. In ancient times, the Emperor would tour the lands and meet with the lords. Your Majesty should simply set out, pretending to tour Yunmeng, and gather the lords at Qin. Qin is the western border of Chu. When Han Xian hears the Emperor is coming on a friendly tour, the situation will naturally lead him to come out to the outskirts to greet you without any suspicion. When he comes to pay his respects, your Majesty can seize him. This would be a task for just a single strongman. The Emperor agreed and sent envoys to notify the lords to assemble at Qin, saying, I am heading south to tour Yunmeng. The Emperor then set out following them. Han Xian, the king of Chu, heard of this. He felt suspicious and afraid, not knowing what to do. Someone advised Han Xian, saying, If you execute Zhongli Mei and present him to the Emperor, he will be pleased, and you will have no more worries. Han Xian actually followed this advice. In the 12th month, the Emperor met the lords at Qin. Han Xian arrived to pay his respects, carrying Zhongli Mei's head. The Emperor immediately ordered his warriors to bind Han Xian and place him in a rear carriage. Han Xian said, It is just as people say, when the cunning rabbits are dead, the hunting dogs are cooked, when the flying birds are gone, the good bows are stowed away, when the enemy states are destroyed, the wise ministers are executed. Now that the empire is settled, it is only natural that I am to be cooked. The Emperor replied, Someone accused you of treason. He then had Han Xian shackled and taken back to the capital, taking the opportunity to grant a general amnesty to the empire. Tian Ken congratulated the Emperor, saying, Your Majesty has captured Han Xian and established your rule in the heart of Qin. Qin is a land of superior strategic geography, girded by the river and sheltered by mountains. Its terrain is most advantageous. Deploying troops from there against the lords is like pouring water from a high roof. It is an unstoppable force. As for Qi, it has the abundance of Langya and Jima to the east and the natural defenses of Mount Tai to the south. To the west is the barrier of the Yellow River, and to the north are the advantages of the Bohai Sea. The territory spans 2,000 li with 1,000,000 troops. It is essentially a Qin of the east. Unless it is one of your closest kin, no one should be allowed to rule as king of Qi. The Emperor said, Excellent, and rewarded Tian Ken with 500 caddies of gold. Upon returning to Luoyang, the Emperor pardoned Han Xian's capital offense and reinfected him as the Marquis of Huayin. Han Xian knew the Emperor feared and detested his abilities, so he often claimed illness to avoid attending court or accompanying the Emperor. He was constantly resentful, and felt ashamed to be ranked alongside the likes of Zhou Bo and Guanning. He once visited General Fan Kuai. Fan knelt to greet and see him off, referring to himself as a subject and saying, I am honored that your Majesty has deigned to visit me. As Han Xian left, he laughed to himself and said, To think that in this life, I have ended up in the same rank as men like Fan Kuai. The Emperor once casually discussed with Han Xian the abilities of various generals and how many troops each could lead. The Emperor asked, How many could I lead? Han Xian replied, Your Majesty can lead no more than 100,000. The Emperor asked, And what about you? He replied, For your servant, the more the better. The Emperor laughed and asked, If more is better, then how did you end up captured by me? Han Xian replied. Your Majesty may not be able to lead soldiers, but you are expert at leading generals. That is why I was captured by you. Furthermore, Your Majesty's talent is a gift from heaven. It is not something that can be achieved through human effort alone. On the day of Jiaxin, the emperor began the formal process of splitting the tallies and enfeoffing his meritorious officials as marquises. Xiao He was enfeoffed as the Marquis of Zan, and the number of households in his fief was exceptionally large. The meritorious officials all complained. We personally donned heavy armor and wielded sharp weapons on the front lines. The most distinguished of us fought over 100 battles, while the least fought dozens of encounters. Yet now Xiao He, who has never experienced the toil of galloping into battle, merely wielding his brush and offering discussions from the rear, has unexpectedly been placed above us. Why is this so? The emperor asked. Do you gentlemen know anything about hunting? In hunting, those who chase and kill the beasts and rabbits are the dogs, while the one who unleashes the dogs and points out where the prey is hidden is the man. Now you gentlemen have only succeeded in catching the prey. You are meritorious dogs. As for Xiao He, he was the one who unleashed the dogs and directed the hunt. He is a meritorious man. The officials all dared not speak another word. Zhang Liang served as a strategist and likewise had no battlefield achievements. The emperor allowed him to personally choose 30,000 households in the land of Qi for his fief. Zhang Liang said, Initially, I rose up in Xiapi and met your Majesty in Lu. This was heaven bestowing me upon your Majesty. Your Majesty used my strategies, and fortunately, they were often successful. I only wish to be enfeoffed in Lu, that is enough for me. I dare not accept 30,000 households. Therefore, the emperor formally enfeoffed Zhang Liang as the Marquis of Lu. The emperor enfeoffed Chen Ping as the Marquis of Huyo. Chen Ping declined, saying, This is not my achievement alone. The emperor said, I use your strategies to win battles and defeat enemies. If this is not merit, what is? Ping said, Without Wei Wuji, how could I have ever been introduced to you? The emperor said, A man like you can truly be said to never forget your origins. Thereupon, the emperor also rewarded Wei Wuji. The emperor considered that the empire was newly stabilized, his sons were young, and he had few brothers. Taking a lesson from the fall of the Qin due to its isolation, he wished to enfeoff many of his kinsmen to pacify the empire. In the first month of spring, on the day of Bingwu, the emperor divided the lands of Han Xian, the king of Chu, into 2 kingdoms. He designated 53 counties east of the Huai River and established his cousin, General Lu Jia, as the king of Jing. And from 36 counties including Shui, Donghai, and Pengqing, he established his younger brother, Lord Wenxin, Lu Jiao, as the king of Chu. On the day of Renzi, using 53 counties from Yinzhong, Yanmen, and Dai, he established his older brother, the Marquis of Yisin, Lu Shi, as the king of Dai. And using 73 counties from Jiaodong, Jiaoxi, Linzi, Jibei Boyang, and Qingyang, he established Lu Fei, his son by a mistress from his humble days, as the king of Qi. All the people who could speak the Qi dialect were placed under the jurisdiction of Qi. The emperor considered Han Wang Xian, King Xian of Han, to be talented and martial, and noted that his kingdom was near Gong and Luoyang to the north, close to Wan and Yi to the south, and had Huaiyang to the east, all locations of the empire's elite troops. So he designated the 31 counties of Taiyuan Commandery as the new Kingdom of Han, and moved Han Wan Xian to the region north of Taiyuan to defend against the barbarians, with his capital at Jinyang. Xian submitted a memorial saying, "My kingdom is on the frontier, and the Xiongnu frequently launch invasions. Jinyang is far from the border. I request to establish my seat of government at Mai." The emperor granted his request. The emperor had already enfeoffed more than 20 of the most distinguished officials, while the rest argued day and night over their merits without resolution, so their enfeoffments could not be carried out. While at the southern palace in Luoyang, the emperor looked down from the covered elevated walkway and saw the various generals, who were frequently sitting together in the sand, whispering to one another. The emperor asked, "What are they talking about?" The Marquis of Lu said, "Does your Majesty not know? This is a plot for rebellion." The emperor said, "The empire has just become stable. For what reason would they rebel?" The Marquis of Lu said, "Your Majesty rose from commoner status and took the empire with these very people. Now your Majesty is the emperor, but those you have enfeoffed are all your old friends and favorites. And those you have executed are all people you have held grudges against throughout your life. Now the military officers are calculating their merits and believe the entire empire is not large enough to enfeoff everyone. These people fear that your Majesty cannot reward them all, and they worry that they will be suspected for their past faults and then executed. Therefore, they are gathering together to plot a rebellion." The emperor became worried and asked, "What should I do about this?" The Marquis of Lu asked, "Of the people whom your Majesty has hated throughout your life, and whom all the officials know of, who is the most hated?" The emperor said, "Yongqi and I have an old grudge. He has cornered and insulted me many times. I wanted to kill him, but because he has many achievements, I could not bring myself to do it." The Marquis of Lu said, "Enfeoff Yongqi immediately. Then every official will feel secure." Therefore, the emperor held a banquet and enfeoffed Yongqi as the Marquis of Shifang. And he urgently ordered the chancellor and the imperial counselor to determine merits and carry out the enfeoffments. When the banquet ended, the officials were all joyful and said, "If even Yongqi is made a marquis, then we have nothing to fear." Your servant Sima Guang says, Zhang Liang was the strategist for Emperor Gaozu, who entrusted him as a confidant. It is only fitting that he would hold nothing back in his advice. How could he have heard of the general's plot to rebel and yet waited until Emperor Gaozu personally witnessed them whispering in small groups before finally speaking up? This is likely because Emperor Gaozu, having just won the empire, frequently issued punishments and rewards based on personal likes and dislikes, sometimes compromising ultimate justice. Consequently, many officials and generals harbored resentment and felt their personal safety was in jeopardy. Therefore, Zhang Liang used the incident to offer loyal advice and shift the emperor's intent, preventing the ruler from showing bias and the subjects from hatching plots out of suspicion and fear. Thus the state faced no calamity, and the benefits reached future generations. One such as Zhang Liang can truly be called a master of persuasion. After all the marquises had received their titles, an imperial decree was issued to determine the ranking of the 18 primary meritorious officials. Everyone said, "The Marquis of Pingyang, Chao Shen, suffered 70 wounds on his body and captured vast territories. His contributions are the greatest. He should be ranked first." The usher and Marquis of the Interior, Yi Qianqiu, stepped forward and said, "The discussions of the officials are all mistaken. Although Chao Shen possesses the merit of open field battles and capturing lands, this is merely a matter of temporary duration. The emperor confronted Chu for 5 years, losing armies and men, and frequently fleeing alone for his life. Yet Xiao He constantly dispatched troops from Guangzhou to replenish the ranks, even without the emperor's imperial summons, tens of thousands of men would assemble. The emperor was destitute and cut off many times. Furthermore, the army had no immediate grain supplies. Xiao He transported grain via the waterways from Guanzhong, ensuring that the food supply never failed. Your Majesty may have fled in defeat from east of the mountains many times, but Xiao He always preserved Guanzhong to await your return. This is an eternal merit. Even if today we lacked 100 men like Chao Shen, what loss would that be to the Han? Han obtained them, but did not necessarily depend on them for its preservation. How can one wish to place temporary merit above eternal merit? Xiao He should be first, and Chao Shen second. The emperor said, "Excellent." He then granted Xiao He the privilege of wearing his sword and shoes into the hall, and of entering the court without having to hurry his pace. The emperor said, "I have heard that those who introduce worthies receive the highest rewards. While Xiao He's merit is high, it has become even more apparent through Lord Yi's words. Therefore, based on Yi Qianqiu's original fief, he was enfeoffed as the Marquis of Wumping. That day, he enfeoffed more than 10 of Xiao He's fathers, sons, and brothers, each with a fief, and increased Xiao He's own fief by 2,000 households. The emperor returned to Yeyang. In the 5th month of summer, on the day of Bingwu, he honored his father, the great duke, as the supreme emperor. Originally, the Xiongnu feared the Qin and had migrated north for over 10 years. When the Qin perished, the Xiongnu gradually began to cross the river southward again. The Shanyu Tuman had an heir named Modu. Later, Tuman had a favored consort who gave birth to a younger son, and he wished to establish the younger son as his heir instead. At that time, the Eastern Hu were powerful and the Yuezhi were flourishing, so Tuman sent Modu as a hostage to the Yuezhi. Shortly after, Tuman suddenly attacked the Yuezhi, and the Yuezhi intended to kill Modu in retaliation. Modu stole an excellent horse from them, mounted it, and fled back to his people. Tuman considered him courageous, and ordered him to command 10,000 cavalry. Modu then created whistling arrows and used them to train his cavalry in archery. He issued an order: "Whoever fails to shoot at the target hit by my whistling arrow shall be beheaded." Modu used a whistling arrow to shoot his own prize horse, and then he shot his favorite wife. Among his followers, anyone who dared not shoot was beheaded. Finally, he shot a whistling arrow at the Shanyu's prize horse, and all his followers shot at it too. Thus, Modu knew that his troops were ready for use. He accompanied Tuman on a hunt and shot a whistling arrow at him. His followers all followed suit and shot at Tuman as well. He thus killed Tuman and executed his stepmother, his younger brother, and all high officials who would not obey him. Modu established himself as the Shanyu. The Eastern Hu heard of Modu's ascension and sent an envoy to say, "We want Tuman's 1,000-li horse." Modu consulted his officials, and they all said, "This is a treasure of the Xiongnu. Do not give it to them." Modu said, "How can one begrudge a single horse to a neighboring country?" And he gave it to them. After a while, the Eastern Hu sent another envoy to say, "We want one of the Shanyu's consorts." Modu again consulted his followers, who all said angrily, "The Eastern Hu are outrageous to demand a consort. Let us attack them." Modu said, "How can one begrudge a single woman to a neighboring country?" And he gave his favorite consort to the Eastern Hu. The king of the Eastern Hu became increasingly arrogant. Between the Eastern Hu and the Xiongnu, there was a stretch of wasteland where no one lived, extending over 1,000 li. Each side occupied its own edge, treating it as a border defense zone. The Eastern Hu sent an envoy to Modu saying, "We want to take possession of this wasteland." Modu consulted his officials, and some said, It is only a wasteland. Giving it or not giving it is both acceptable. Moda flew into a great rage and said, Land is the root of the nation. How can one give it away? All those who had spoken in favor of giving away the land were beheaded. Moda mounted his horse and ordered, Whoever is late to depart shall be beheaded, and he then launched a surprise attack on the Eastern Hu. The Eastern Hu had initially underestimated Moda and were unprepared. Moda thus destroyed the Eastern Hu. After returning, he struck west to drive away the Yuezhi, and to the south, he annexed the Lu Fan and Baiyang kingdoms south of the river. He then invaded Yan and Dai, reclaiming all the former Xiongnu lands taken by Meng Tian, and reached the Han fortifications south of the river, as far as Chaona and Fushi. At that time, the Han forces were confronting Xianyu, and the central plains were exhausted from military strife. Therefore, Modu was able to strengthen himself, possessing over 300,000 skilled archers and intimidating the surrounding nations. In the autumn, the Xiongnu besieged Han Wang Xian at Mai. Xian sent several envoys to the barbarians to seek a peace settlement. The Han dispatched troops to rescue him. Suspecting that Xian's frequent secret envoys meant he was disloyal, the emperor sent people to reprimand him. Fearing execution, in the 9th month, Xian surrendered Mai to the Xiongnu. The Xiongnu Moda then led his troops south across Juju Mountain, attacking Taiyuan and reaching Jinyang. Emperor Gaozu abolished all the harsh and cumbersome rituals and laws of the Qin dynasty, replacing them with a system that was simple and easy to follow. The ministers drank heavily and bickered over their achievements. When drunk, some shouted wildly or drew their swords to strike the pillars, causing the emperor to grow increasingly disgusted. Shu Sun Tong advised the emperor, saying, Confucian scholars are difficult to lead in conquest, but they are ideal partners for maintaining the empire. I wish to recruit scholars from Lu to work with my disciples in establishing a system of court rituals. The emperor asked, Won't that be too difficult? Shu Sun Tong replied, The 5 emperors had different music, and the 3 kings had different rituals. Ritual is something created to regulate and refine according to the era and human nature. I wish to adopt parts of ancient rituals and mix them with Qin ceremonies to create a new system. The emperor said, You may try it. Make it easy to understand and design it according to what I am capable of doing. Consequently, Shu Sun Tong sent for and recruited over 30 scholars from Lu. 2 scholars from Lu refused to go, saying, You have served nearly 10 masters, gaining favor and wealth through blatant flattery. The empire has just been settled, the dead are not yet buried, and the wounded have not yet recovered, yet you wish to establish rituals and music. Rituals and music can only truly flourish after a century of accumulated virtue. We cannot endure doing what you do. Go away and do not defile us. Shu Sun Tong smiled and said, You are truly narrow-minded pedants who do not understand the changing times. Consequently, he went west with the 30 men he had recruited. Along with the emperor's learned attendants and his own disciples, totaling over 100 people, they set up markers in the wilderness and practiced the rituals. After more than a month, he said to the emperor, You may now come and observe. The emperor watched them perform the rituals and said, I can do this. He then ordered all the ministers to practice the ceremonies. In the 7th year of Emperor Gaozu, the year of Xinqiu, 200 BC. In winter, the 10th month, the Changel Palace was completed, and all the feudal lords and ministers came to offer their congratulations. Before dawn, the ushers managed the ritual and led the guests through the palace gates in order of rank, lining them up to face east and west. Guards flanked the palace steps and stood in the courtyard, all holding weapons and displaying banners. Then the emperor's arrival was heralded, and his carriage emerged from the palace chambers. The ushers led the feudal lords and officials down to the rank of 600 pickles to offer their congratulations in order. None were not awestruck and solemn. When the ceremony concluded, a formal ritual banquet was held. Those seated in attendance in the hall all prostrated themselves, bowing their heads. They rose in order of rank to offer toasts of longevity to the emperor. After 9 rounds of toasts, the ushers announced, "The drinking is concluded." The censors enforced the laws, and any who failed to follow the protocol were immediately escorted out. Throughout the entire session and banquet, none dared to be rowdy or behave improperly. Thereupon the emperor said, "Only today do I know the greatness of being an emperor." He then appointed Shu Sun Tong as Grand Master of Ceremonies and rewarded him with 500 catties of gold. Initially, when the Qin possessed the empire, they incorporated the rituals of the 6 states, selecting and preserving those that exalted the ruler and humbled the subjects. When Shu Sun Tong formulated the rituals, he made some additions and deletions, but largely followed the established practices of the Qin. From the title of the Son of Heaven down to the subordinate officials, palaces, and official titles, very little was changed. These records were later compiled along with the statutes and ordinances and kept by the judicial officials. Legalists also ceased to transmit them, so that among the people and officials, none spoke of them. Your servant Sima says, "The significance of ritual is truly grand. Applied to the individual, one's movements and stillness follow rules, and all conduct is perfected. Applied to the family, internal and external affairs are distinguished, and the clans live in harmony. Applied to the village, order exists between elders and youths, and customs become beautiful. Applied to the state, order exists between ruler and minister, and politics are successfully conducted. Applied to the empire, the feudal lords submit, and the discipline is upright. Is it only on the mats and in the courtyards that it prevents disorder?" With the wisdom of Emperor Gaozu, he praised the words of Lu Jia and marveled at the ceremonies of Shu Sun Tong. Yet the reason he could not stand alongside the kings of the 3 dynasties was simply his lack of learning. At that time, had he obtained a great scholar to assist him in governing with ritual, would his achievements have been limited to this? What a pity that Shu Sun Tong's capacity was so small. He merely stole the husks of ritual to cater to the world and seek favor. Thus the rituals of the former kings were lost and never revived even until today. Is this not deeply painful? Therefore Yangzi mocked it, saying, "Long ago in Lu there was a high minister whose name is lost to history." Who asked, "How great was his stature?" Saying, "When Shu Sun Tong wished to establish court protocols and summon teachers from Lu, there were 2 whom he could not compel to come." One asked, "If so, was Confucius wrong to travel among the feudal lords?" The answer was, Confucius traveled so that he might put his own principles into practice. If one compromises oneself to follow others, though one has the compass and square, how can one use them? How excellent are the words of Yangzi! How could a truly great scholar sacrifice his principles for temporary success? The emperor personally led the attack against King Xian of Han, defeating his army at Tongji and slaying his general Wang Shi. Xian fled to the Xiongnu. Meng Qichen and Wang Huang, natives of Baitu, established Zhao Li, a descendant of the Zhao family, as king, and regathered Xian's defeated troops. Working together with Xian and the Xiongnu to plot an attack on the Han. The Xiongnu sent their left and right wise kings with over 10,000 cavalry to join Wang Huang and camped south of Guangwu, reaching Jinyang. The Han army attacked them, and the Xiongnu repeatedly retreated but then regrouped, the Han army followed up on their victory and pursued them. It happened that the weather was freezing with snow, and 2 or 3 out of every 10 soldiers lost their fingers to frostbite. While the emperor was stationed in Jinyang, he received word that the Xiongnu leader Moda was positioned in Daegu, and he resolved to launch an attack against him. He dispatched scouts to spy on the Xiongnu, but the cunning Moda hid his elite warriors and sturdy livestock, showing only the elderly, the frail, and emaciated animals. More than 10 groups of envoys returned, and they all reported unanimously that the Xiongnu were vulnerable and could be easily defeated. The emperor once again sent Lu Jing on a mission to the Xiongnu, before he could return. The Han mobilized its entire force of 320,000 troops to pursue them northward, crossing the Juju Mountains. Lu Jing returned and reported, "When 2 nations are about to clash, they normally should boast of their power and display their strengths. Now when I went there, I saw only the emaciated and the elderly. This is surely an intentional display of weakness to hide an ambush and seize an advantage. In my humble opinion, the Xiongnu must not be attacked." At that time, the Han army had already set out. The emperor was enraged and cursed Lu Jing, saying, "You low-born wretch from Qi, you gained your office through mere talk, and now you dare use reckless words to demoralize my army." He ordered Lu Jing to be shackled and imprisoned in Guangwu. The emperor reached Pingqing first, before the rest of his army had fully arrived. Modu unleashed 400,000 elite cavalry and besieged the emperor on Baiding Mountain for 7 days. The Han troops inside and outside were unable to reinforce or supply one another. The emperor employed a secret strategy from Qinping, sending an envoy to secretly present lavish gifts to the Chinese consort, the Yanshi. The Yanshi said to Modu, "2 rulers should not force each other into such a desperate corner. Even if you gain the Han lands, you, the Shanyu, would ultimately be unable to reside there and rule them. Moreover, the Han emperor is also protected by divine spirits. Pray consider this, Shanyu." Modu had a prearranged meeting with Wang Huang and Zhao Li, but when their troops failed to arrive, he suspected they were plotting with the Han and opened a corner of the encirclement. It happened that there was a heavy fog. The Han sent people back and forth, and the Xiongnu noticed nothing. Qinping requested that the archers be ordered to knock 2 arrows per powerful crossbow, pointing outward, and charge directly through the opened corner. Once the emperor escaped the siege, he wanted to gallop away. However, the coachman Lord Ting insisted on maintaining a slow pace. When they arrived at Pingqing, the main Han army also appeared, and the Xiongnu cavalry finally dispersed and left. The Han also ceased military operations and returned, ordering Fan Kuai to remain and pacify the lands of Dai. When the emperor reached Guangwu, he pardoned Lu Jing and said, "I did not heed your words, which resulted in my entrapment at Pingqing. I have already executed all those 10 groups of earlier envoys." He then enfeoffed Lu Jing with 2,000 households as the Marquis of Within the Passes, giving him the title Marquis of Jianxin. As the emperor headed south and passed through Cunei, he remarked, "What a magnificent county! In all my travels across the land, I have seen only Luoyang and this place." He then changed Qinping's title to Marquis of Cunei, granting him the entire revenue of the county. Qinping followed the emperor on his military campaigns and proposed a total of 6 ingenious strategies, each time receiving an increase in his fief. In the 12th month, the emperor was returning and passed through the state of Zhao. King Ao of Zhao behaved with the utmost humility befitting a son-in-law, but the emperor sat in a disrespectful, sprawling manner and spoke to him with insulting arrogance. The Zhao chancellor Guan Gao, Zhao Wu, and others were incensed and said, "Our king is a truly feeble ruler." They advised the king, saying, "When all the heroes of the land rose up, those with ability established themselves first. Now you serve the emperor with great reverence, yet he is insolent. We beg to kill him for you. Zhang Ao bit his finger until it bled and said, What a terrible mistake you are making in saying this! Our predecessor lost his kingdom, and it was only thanks to the emperor that it was restored, with his kindness extending even to our descendants. Everything we have, down to the last fiber, is due to the emperor's power. I beg you never to utter such things again. Guan Gao, Zhao Wu, and the others said to one another, It is we who are in the wrong. Our king is a man of virtue and will not betray a kindness. However, it is a matter of honor for us that we do not endure such insults. Now the emperor has insulted our king, so we wish to kill him, but why should we stain the king's reputation for it? If we succeed, the credit goes to the king. If we fail, we alone shall suffer the consequences. The Xiongnu attacked Dai. King Shi of Dai abandoned his kingdom and returned on his own. He was pardoned and made Marquis of Heian. On the day of Xinmao, the emperor established his son Rui as the king of Dai. In the second month of spring, the emperor arrived in Chang'an. Xiao He was overseeing the construction of Weiyang Palace. When the emperor saw its grandeur, he was very angry and said to Xiao He, The whole world is in turmoil after years of hard fighting, and its ultimate outcome is still uncertain. Why have you built such an extravagant palace? Xiao He replied, Precisely because the world is not yet settled, we should take this opportunity to complete the palace. Furthermore, the Son of Heaven takes the entire world as his home. Without such grandeur, there is no way to manifest his supreme authority. Moreover, this will leave no room for future generations to exceed it. The emperor was pleased. Your servant Sima Guang says, A ruler should take benevolence and righteousness as his splendor, and virtue as his majesty. I have never heard of a ruler who subjugated the world through grand palaces. When the world is not yet settled, one should practice self-restraint and frugality to address the urgent needs of the people. Yet to prioritize grand palaces, how can this be called understanding the proper priorities of statecraft? Of old Yu the Great kept his palace humble, while the tyrant Jia built towering palaces. Even when a founding monarch practices frugality as an example for his descendants, later generations may still fall into decadence. How much more so if he sets an example of extravagance? To say, leave no room for future generations to exceed it. Is this not utterly preposterous? As for Emperor Wu, who eventually exhausted the realm through grand construction, this may well have been triggered by the precedent set by the Marquis of Zan. The emperor moved the capital from Yanyang to Chang'an. For the first time, the office of Zongjing was established to organize the imperial clan. In the 4th month of summer, the emperor traveled to Luoyang.
企图为大渊县，晋崇光赤奋若，凡3年。太祖高皇帝中5年，己亥，公元前202年冬10月，汉王追向禹至固陵，与齐王信、魏相国越期会击楚，信、越不至，楚击汉军，大破之。汉王复坚壁自守，谓张良曰：“诸侯不从，奈何？”对曰：“楚兵且破，2人未有分地，其不至故矣。君王能与共天下，可立志也。”其王信之力，非君王意，信亦不自坚。彭越本定梁地，使君王以未报，故拜越为相国。今报死，越亦望亡，而君王不早定。今能取睢阳以北至古城，借以王彭越，从陈以东赴海，与其王信。信家在楚，其意欲复得故意。能出捐此地以许2人，使各自为战，则楚亦破也。汉王从之。于是韩信、彭越皆引兵来。11月，刘贾南渡淮，为寿春，遣人诱楚大司马周殷。殷叛楚，以书屠六，举9将兵迎秦部，并行屠城父，随刘贾皆会。12月，项王至垓下，兵少，时尽，与汉战不胜，入壁，汉军及诸侯兵围之。 书中项王夜闻汉军四面皆楚歌，乃大惊曰：汉皆以得楚乎？是何楚人之多也？则夜起，饮帐中，悲歌慷慨，气数行下，左右皆泣，莫能仰视。于是项王乘其骏马鸣追，麾下壮士骑从者800余人，直夜溃为南出驰走。平明，汉军乃决之，令其将灌婴以5000骑追之。项王渡淮，其能逐者才100余人。至阴陵，迷失道，问一田父，田父代曰：左。左，乃献大泽中，以故汉追及之。项王乃复引兵而东，至东城，乃有28骑。汉骑追者数千人，项王自度不得脱，谓其曰：吾起兵至今8岁矣，身70余战，未尝败北，遂霸有天下。然今卒困于此，此天之亡我，非战之罪也。今日故决死，愿为诸军快战，必溃为斩将一骑3胜之，令诸军之天亡我，非战之罪也。乃分其骑以为4队4项，汉军为之数众。项王谓其曰：吾为攻取彼一将，令4面齐池下，七山东为3处。于是项王大呼池下，汉军皆披靡，遂斩汉一将。是时郎中骑杨喜追项王，项王嗔目而斥之，喜人马俱惊，辟易数里。项王与其骑会为3处，汉军不知项王所在，乃分军为3，复为之。项王乃驰，复斩汉一都尉，杀数十百人。复据其骑，王其2骑耳。乃谓其曰：何如？其皆服曰：如大王言。于是项王欲东渡乌江，乌江亭常以传代，谓项王曰：江东虽小，地方千里，众数10万人，亦足往也。愿大王急渡。今独臣有传，汉军至，吾已渡。项王笑曰：天之亡我，我何渡为？且即与江东子弟8000人渡江而西，竟无一人还。纵江东父凶连而亡我，我何面目见之？纵彼不言，即独不愧于心乎？乃以所乘追马刺亭长，令其皆下马步行，持短兵接战。独己所杀汉军数百人，身亦被10余创。故见汉骑司马吕马童曰：若非吾故人乎？马童面之，只是中郎骑王义曰：此项王也。项王乃曰：吾闻汉购我头1000金，亿万户，无为若得。乃吻而死。王义取其头，与其相柔剑争项王，相杀者数十人。遂其后，杨喜、吕马童及郎中吕胜、杨武各得其一体，5人共会其体，皆是，故分其户，封5人皆为列侯。楚地西定，独路不下。汉王引天下兵欲屠之，至其城下，犹闻弦颂之声，为其守礼。一之国为主死节，乃持项王头以示鲁父兄，鲁乃降。汉王以鲁公礼葬项王于古城，亲为发哀，哭之而去。诸项氏之属皆不诛。封项伯等4人皆为列侯，赐姓刘氏。诸民略在楚者，皆归之。太史公曰：于启龙母之中3年，遂将5诸侯灭秦，分裂天下而封王侯，正有语出，未虽不忠，近古以来未尝有也。即与被关怀楚，放逐异地而自立，愿王侯叛己，难矣。自今攻伐，奋其私志而不失古，为霸王之业，欲以力争经营天下。5年，卒亡齐国，身死东城，尚不觉悟而不自责，乃引天亡我，非用兵之罪也，岂不谬哉？杨子法言，或问：楚败垓下，方死，曰天也，亮乎？曰：汉屈群策，群策屈群力，楚顿群策而自屈其力。屈人者克，自屈者富。天何故焉？汉王还，至定陶，驰入齐王信壁，夺其军。临江王共谓不降，遣卢绾、刘贾击虏之。春正月，更立齐王信为楚王，王淮北，都下邳。封魏相国建成侯彭越为梁王，王位故地，都定陶。令曰：兵不得休8年，万民于苦甚。今天下事毕，其赦天下殊死以下。诸侯王皆上书，请尊汉王为皇帝。2月甲午，王即皇帝位于泗水之阳。更王后曰皇后，太子曰皇太子，追尊先媪曰昭灵夫人。诏曰：故衡山王吴瑞从100越之兵，左诸侯诸暴秦，有大功，诸侯立以为王，项羽侵夺之地，谓之藩君。其以瑞为长沙王。又曰：故越王吴诸侍奉越嗣，秦侵夺其地，使其社稷不得血食。诸侯伐秦， 吴诸身率闽中兵以左灭秦，项羽废而弗立，今以为闽越王，王闽中帝。帝西都洛阳。夏5月，兵皆罢归家。诏：民前或相聚宝山泽，不书名数。今天下已定，令各归其县，复故爵、田宅，立以文法教训便告，勿耻辱军立足。爵及7大夫以上，皆令10役；非7大夫以下，皆负其身疾户，勿视。帝置酒洛阳南宫。上月，撤后，诸将无敢引阵，皆言其情。吾所以有天下者何？项氏之所以失天下者何？高启、王陵对曰：陛下使人攻城略地，因以与之，与天下同其利。项羽不然，有攻者害之，贤者疑之，此其所以失天下也。上月，攻之其一，谓之其二。夫运筹帷幄之中，决胜千里之外，无不如子房；振国家，抚百姓，给饷馈，不绝粮道，无不如萧何；连100万之众，战必胜，攻必取，无不如韩信。三者皆人杰，无能用之，此吾所以取天下者也。项羽有一范增而不能用，此所以为我秦也。群臣说服。韩信至楚，赵漂母赐千金。赵如己少年，令出胯下者，以为中尉，告诸将相曰：此壮士也。方如我时，我宁不能杀之邪？杀之无名，故忍而就此。彭越既受汉封，田横拒诸，与其徒属500余人入海，居岛中。帝以田横兄弟本定其地，其贤者多附焉，今在海中，不取，后恐为乱，乃使使赦横罪，召之。横谢曰：臣彭陛下之使立生，今闻其弟伤为汉将，臣恐惧，不敢奉诏，请为庶人守海岛中。使还报，帝乃诏魏魏立商曰：其王田横即至，人马从者敢动摇者，至足矣。乃复使持节具告以诏商状，曰：田横来，大者亡，小者乃侯耳；不来，且举兵加诛焉。横乃与其客2人乘船诣洛阳，未至30里，至师相救治。横谢使者曰：人臣见天子，当喜慕。因此刘谓其客曰：横时与汉王居南面称孤，今汉王为天子，而横乃为王鲁，北面视之，其耻故已甚矣。且无烹人之凶，与其弟并肩而事主，纵彼为天子之兆不敢动，我独不愧于心乎？且陛下所以遇见我者，不过遇一见无面貌耳。今斩无头，持30里间，形容尚未能败，犹可观也。遂自警，令客奉其头，从使者持奏之。帝曰：嗟乎！其自布衣，兄弟3人更亡，岂不贤哉？为之流涕，而拜其2客为都尉，发卒2000人。以亡者礼葬之。祭葬，2客穿其种棒孔，皆自警，下从之。帝闻之，大惊。以横客皆贤，余500人尚在海中，使召之，至，则闻田死，亦皆自杀。初，楚人季布为项籍将，属窘辱地。项籍灭，帝购裘布1000斤，敢有舍逆，罪3族。不乃昆钱为奴，自卖于朱家。朱家心知其季布也，买至田舍，深知洛阳见滕公，说曰：季布何罪？臣各为其主用，直耳。项使臣岂可尽诛邪？今上使得天下，而以私怨求一人，何事不广也？且以季布之贤，汉求之急，此不北走胡，南走越耳。夫既壮士以资敌国，此伍子胥所以边荆平之目也。君何不从容为上言之？滕公待谏言于上，如朱家旨。上乃设部，召拜郎中，朱家遂不复见之。布母弟丁公，亦为项羽将，主迥弟彭城西。短兵接，帝急，故谓丁公曰：两贤岂相恶哉？丁公引兵而还。及项王灭，丁公夜见。帝以丁公训军中，曰：丁公为项王臣不忠，使项王失天下者也。遂斩之，曰：使后为人臣无效丁公也。陈光曰：高祖起封，沛以来，网罗豪杰，招王纳叛，亦已多矣。及帝位，而丁公独以不忠受禄，何哉？夫进取之于守城，其事不同。当群雄角逐之际，民无定主，来者受之，故其宜也。即贵为天子，4海之内，无不为臣。苟不明礼义以事之，使为臣者，人怀2心以矫大利，则国家其能久安乎？是故断以大义，使天下小然皆知为臣不忠者无所自容，而怀思结恩者，虽至于活己，犹以义不与也。戮1人而1000万人惧，其虑事岂不深且远哉？ 子孙享有天禄400余年，1亿矣。其人娄敬树陇西，过洛阳，托宛路，一阳求，因其人于将军求见上。于将军欲与之先衣，娄敬曰：臣衣帛，衣帛见，议贺，议贺见，终不敢一衣。于是于将军入言上，上召见，问之。娄敬曰：陛下都洛阳，岂欲与周氏比龙哉？上曰：然。娄敬曰：陛下取天下与周邑。周之先，自后继封台，积德累善，时有余事，至于太王、王继、文王、武王，而诸侯自归之，遂灭殷为天子。及成王即位，周公相焉，乃迎洛邑，以为此天下之中也。诸侯四方纳贡职，道理君。一有德则义以王，无德则义以亡。故周之盛时，天下和洽，诸侯四夷莫不宾服，效其贡之。及其衰也，天下莫朝，周不能治也，非为其德保也，行事弱也。今陛下起封、沛、卷蜀、汉、定3秦，与项羽战荥阳、成皋之间，大战70，小战40，使天下之民肝脑涂地，父子铺谷中也，不可胜数，哭泣之声未绝，伤夷者未起，而欲比龙于城康之时，臣妾以为不谋也。且夫秦地披山戴河，4塞以为固，猝然有疾，100万之众可力拒也。因秦之故，自甚美高于之地，此所谓天府者也。陛下入关而都之，山东虽乱，秦之故，地可全而有也。夫与人斗，不义其抗，抚其背，未能全其胜也。今陛下按秦之故地，此亦扼天下之抗而抚其背也。帝问群臣，群臣皆山东人，争言：周亡数百年，秦2世即亡。洛阳东有成皋，西有尧、渑、备河、相依、洛，其故亦足是也。上问张良，良曰：洛阳虽有此故，其中小不过数百里，田地薄，四面受敌，此非用武之国也。关中左尧、韩、右陇、蜀、沃野千里，南有巴、蜀之饶，北有胡苑之力，阻3面而守。独以一面东至诸侯，诸侯安定，和为曹宛天下，西给京师，诸侯有变，顺流而下，足以委书。此所谓金城千里，天府之国也。娄敬说是也。上即日车驾西，都长安，拜娄敬为郎中，号曰奉春君，赐姓刘氏。张良素多病，从上入关，即倒饮，不食谷，杜门不出，曰：家事向韩，及韩灭，不爱万金之资，为韩报仇强秦，天下震动。今以3寸舌为地者师，封万户侯，此不义之极，于良足矣。愿弃人监视，欲从赤松子由耳。陈光曰：夫生之有死，譬有液氮之必然，自古及今，故未尝有超然而独存者也。以子房之名便达理，足以知神仙之为虚诡矣。然其欲从赤松子由者，其志可知也。夫功名之计，人臣之所难处，如高帝所称者，3节而已。淮阴诸夷，萧何细欲，非以履胜马而不止也。故子房托于神仙，遗弃人间，等功名于外物，置荣利而不顾，所谓明哲保身者，子房有焉。6月，壬辰，大赦天下。秋7月，燕王臧荼反，上自将征之。赵景王耳，长沙文王睿皆薨。9月，鲁臧陀，壬子，立太尉长安侯鲁绾为燕王。绾家与上同李汉，绾生又与上同日，上宠幸绾，群臣莫敢忘，故特亡之。项羽故将立即反，上自击破之。后9月，至长乐宫。项王将钟离昧，素与楚王信善。项王死后，王归信。汉王怨昧，闻其在楚，召楚捕昧。信出之国，行献议，陈兵出入。太祖高皇帝中6年庚子，公元前201年冬10月，人有上书告楚王信反者。帝问诸将，皆曰：即发兵，坑数子耳。帝默然。又问陈平，陈平曰：人上书言信反，信之乎？曰：不知。陈平曰：陛下精兵孰于楚？上曰：不能过。平曰：陛下诸将用兵有能过韩信者乎？上曰：莫及也。平曰：今兵不如楚京而将不及，举兵攻之，是去之战也，切为陛下威之。上曰：未之奈何？平曰：古者天子有巡狩，会诸侯。陛下帝出，委由云梦，会诸侯于臣。臣出之西界，信闻天子以好出游，其势必无事而交营业。 业而陛下因秦之，此特一立事之事耳。帝为然，乃发使告诸侯会臣，吾将南游云梦。上因随以行。楚王信闻之，自一句，不知所为。或说信曰：斩中离昧以夜上，上必喜，无患。信从之。12月，上会诸侯于陈，信持昧守夜上，上令武士复信，在后车。信曰：果若人言，狡兔死，走狗烹，飞鸟尽，良弓藏，敌国破，谋臣亡，天下已定，我故当烹。上曰：人告公反。遂谢细信以归，因赦天下。田肯贺上曰：陛下得韩信，又至秦中。秦，行胜之国也，带河阻山，地势便利，其以下兵于诸侯，辟游居高屋之上，见临水也。夫其东有琅琊、即墨之饶，南有泰山之固，西有涿河之险，北有渤海之利，地方2000里，池及100万，此东西秦也，非亲子弟，莫可使亡其者。上曰：善。赐金500斤。上还，至洛阳，设韩信，封为淮阴侯。信之汉王未务其能，多称病，不朝从，居常泱泱，修与将、冠等列。常过樊将军快跪拜送迎，言称臣，曰：大王乃肯临臣。信出门，笑曰：生乃与快等为伍。上常从容与信言，诸将能将兵多少？上问曰：如我能将几何？信曰：陛下不过能将10万。上曰：于君何如？曰：臣多多而益善耳。上笑曰：多多益善，何谓为我秦？信曰：陛下不能将兵而善将将，此乃信之所以为陛下秦也。且陛下所谓天授，非人力也。甲申，使剖扶封诸功臣为彻后。萧何封赞侯，所食邑独多。功臣皆曰：臣等身佩坚执锐，多者100余战，小者数十合。今萧何未尝有汗马之劳，徒持文墨议论，故反居臣等上，何也？帝曰：诸君之猎乎？夫猎，追杀受兔者，狗也；而发纵指示受处者，人也。今诸君徒能得走兽耳，攻狗也，至如萧何发纵指是攻人也。群臣皆不敢言。张良为谋臣，亦无战斗功，帝使自责其3万户。良曰：使臣起下邳，与上会流，此天以臣受陛下。陛下用臣计，幸而时中。臣愿封刘足矣，不敢当3万户。乃封张良为留侯，封陈平为护友侯。平辞曰：此非臣之功也。上曰：吾用先生谋计，战胜克敌，非攻而和。平曰：非谓吾知，臣安得进？上曰：若子可谓不备本矣。乃复赏谓吾之。帝以天下初定，子幼、昆弟少，承秦孤立而亡，欲大封同姓，以田抚天下。春正月丙午，分楚王信帝为2国，以淮东53县立从兄将军甲为荆王，以薛郡、东海、彭城36县立地文信君交为楚王。仁子以云中、雁门、代郡53县立兄宜信侯喜为代王，以胶东、胶西、临淄、蓟北、鄱阳、城阳郡73县立威实外父之子肥为齐王。诸民能其言者，皆以与其。上以韩王信才武，所往北进巩、洛，南破宛、邺，东有淮阳，皆天下境兵处，乃以太原郡31县为韩国。喜韩王信王太原以北，备与胡，都晋阳。信上书曰：国北边，匈奴属入寇，晋阳距色远，请至马邑。上许之。上以封大功臣20余人，其余日夜争功不绝，未得行封。上在洛阳南宫，从复道望见诸将，往往相与，作杀中语。上曰：此何语？刘侯曰：陛下不知乎？此谋反耳。上曰：天下属安定，何故反乎？刘侯曰：陛下岂不依以此属取天下？今陛下为天子，而所封皆故人所亲爱，所诛皆平生所仇怨。今君立济公，以天下不足变封，此属为陛下不能尽封，恐又见疑平生过失及诛，故即相聚谋反耳。上乃忧曰：未知奈何？刘侯曰：上平生所增，群臣所共之，谁最甚者？上曰：雍齿与我有故怨，硕长窘辱我，我欲杀之，为其功多，故不忍。刘侯曰：今即先封雍齿，则群臣人人自坚矣。于是上乃置酒，封雍齿为神方侯，而急趋丞相，欲使定公行封。群臣罢酒，皆喜，曰：雍齿上为侯，我属无患矣。陈光曰： 张良为高帝谋臣，委以心腹，疑其知无不言，安有闻诸将谋反，必待高帝目见偶语，然后乃言之邪？盖以高帝初得天下，数用爱增行诸赏，或实害至公，群臣往往有绝望自危之心。故良因是那种以便夷地义，史上无阿斯之师，下无猜据之谋，国家无虞，利及后世。若两者，可谓善见矣。列侯必受封，诏定员公18人位次。皆曰：平阳侯曹参，身北70创，攻城略地，功最多，夷第一。业者，关内侯鄂千秋进曰：群臣亦皆恶。夫曹参虽有也战略地之功，此特一时之事耳。上与楚相距5岁，失君王众，跳身遁者硕矣。然萧何常从关中遣军捕其处，非上所诏令诏，而数万众会。上之伐绝者数矣。右军无见粮，萧何转曹关中，给食不伐。陛下虽戍亡山东，萧何常全关中以待陛下，此万世之功也。今虽无曹参等百数，何缺于汉？汉得之，不必待以全。奈何欲以一旦之功而加万世之功哉？萧何第一，曹参次之。上曰：善。于是乃赐萧何带剑履上殿，入朝不屈。上曰：吾闻进贤受上赏。萧何功虽高，得鄂郡乃一名。于是因鄂千秋故所10邑，封为安平侯。是日，西封和父子兄弟10余人，皆有10邑，封和2000户。上归溧阳。夏5月丙午，尊太公为太上皇。初，匈奴为秦，北徙10余年。及秦灭，匈奴复烧南渡河。单于头曼有太子曰默读，后有所爱焉之，生少子，头曼欲立之。是时，东胡强而越之盛，乃使默读至于越之。继而头曼急击越之，越之欲杀默读。默读到其善马骑之，王归。头曼以为状，令将万骑。默读乃作鸣笛，袭勒其骑射。令曰：鸣笛所射而不悉射者，斩之。默读乃以鸣笛自射其善马，既有射其爱妻，左右或不敢射者，皆斩之。最后以鸣笛射单于善马，左右皆射之。于是默读知其可用，从头曼列，以鸣笛射头曼，其左右亦皆随鸣笛而射。遂杀头曼，尽诛其后母与弟及大臣不听从者。默读自立为单于。东胡闻冒顿立，乃使使为默读，欲得头曼10千里马。默读问群臣，群臣皆曰：此匈奴宝马也，勿与。冒顿日，奈何与人邻国而爱一马乎？遂与之。居请之。东胡又使使为默读，欲得单于一恶事。默读复问左右，左右皆怒曰：东胡无道，乃求焉之，请击之。默读曰：奈何与人邻国，爱一女子乎？遂取所爱焉之于东胡。东胡王欲一交。东胡与匈奴中间有弃地莫居，1000余里，各居其边，为欧托。东胡使使为默读，此弃地，欲有之。默读问群臣，群臣或曰：此弃地，与之异乎？勿与亦可。于是默读大怒曰：地者，国之本也，奈何与之？诸言与之者，皆斩之。默读上马，令国中有后出者斩。遂袭击东胡。东胡出清默读，不违背，默读遂灭东胡。既归，又袭击走越之，南并楼烦，白杨河南王，遂侵燕代，西收蒙恬所夺匈奴故地，与汉关故河南色至朝纳服师。是时，汉兵方与项羽相拒，中国罢于兵革，以故默读得自强，空闲之士30余万，威服诸国。秋，匈奴为韩王信与马邑，信数使胡，求和解。汉发兵救之，疑信数监使，有2心，使人则让信。信恐诛。9月，以马邑降匈奴。匈奴默读因引兵南于巨筑，攻太原，至晋阳。帝西去秦科以法为简易。群臣饮酒争功，醉或忘乎，拔剑击筑，帝亦厌之。叔孙通说上曰：夫儒者难与进取，可与守成。臣愿征虏诸生，与臣弟子共起朝仪。帝曰：得无难乎？叔孙通曰：武帝亦乐3王不同礼，礼者因时事人情谓之节文者也。臣愿颇才古礼，与秦夷杂就之。上曰：可是为之，另议之，夺无所能行者为之。于是叔孙通使征虏诸生30余人，鲁有2生不肯行，曰：公所事者且始主，皆面于以得亲贵。 今天下初定，死者未葬，伤者未起，又欲其礼乐。礼乐所由起，积得100年而后可兴也。吾不忍为公所为。公去矣，吾我。叔孙通笑曰：若真比如也，不知时变。遂与所谓30人兮，及上左右为学者，与其弟子100余人，为眠罪，野外袭之。乐于言于上曰：可是官矣。上使行礼，曰：吾能为此。乃令群臣习议。太祖高皇帝中7年辛丑，公元前200年冬10月，长乐宫城，诸侯群臣皆朝贺。先平明，业者治礼，以次引入殿门，陈东西厢。卫官辖毕及罗立亭中，皆执兵张旗帜。于是皇帝传景，念出：防引诸侯王以下治礼600石，以次奉贺，莫不震恐肃静。治礼毕，复置罚酒。诸事坐殿上，皆服一手，以尊卑赐起上寿。商酒行，业者言置酒，御史执法举不如仪者，则引去。敬朝置酒，无敢患华失礼者。于是帝曰：吾乃今日之为皇帝之贵也。乃拜叔孙通为太常，赐金500斤。初，秦有天下，西内6国礼仪，采择其尊君义臣者存之。及通治礼，颇有所增损，大抵皆习秦故。自天子称号下至左僚及公事，官名少所变改。其书后与律，令同录，藏于礼官。法家又复不传，民臣莫有言者焉。陈光曰：礼之为物大矣。用之于身，则动静有法而百行备焉；用之于家，则内外有别而九族睦焉；用之于乡，则长幼有伦而俗化美焉；用之于国，则君臣有序而政治成焉；用之于天下，则诸侯顺服而纪纲正焉。岂知几席之上，户庭之间得之而不乱哉？夫以高祖之明达，闻陆贾之言而称善，笃书孙通之仪而叹息。然所以不能比肩于3代之王者，并于不学而已。当世之时，得大儒而佐之，与之矣。礼为天下，其功列起弱势而止哉？昔夫叔孙生之为器小也。图窃礼之康比，以衣饰邪俗取宠而已，遂使先王之礼伦默而不振，以弃于今，岂不痛甚矣哉？是以杨子基之曰：昔者鲁有大臣，始是其名，曰：何如其大也？曰：叔孙通欲治君臣之仪，赵先生与鲁所不能治者2人。曰：若是，则仲尼之开济诸侯也非邪？曰：仲尼开济，将以自用也。如为己而从人，虽有规矩准绳，焉得而用之？善乎杨子之言也。夫大儒者，恶肯毁其规矩准绳，以屈一时之功哉？上自将击韩王信，破其军于同堤，斩其将王喜。信王走匈奴，白土人曼丘臣、王晃等立赵苗裔赵立为王，复收信败散兵，与信及匈奴谋攻汉。匈奴始左右贤王将万余起，与王晃等屯广吴以南，至晋阳，汉兵击之，匈奴折败走，以复屯聚，汉兵乘胜追之。会天大寒，雨雪，士卒堕职者12、3。上居晋阳，闻默独居代谷，欲击之。使人搀匈奴，默独逆其壮士，肥牛马。但见老弱及雷处，使者10倍来，皆言匈奴可击。上复使刘敬王使匈奴，未还，汉西兵32万北逐之，于巨筑。刘敬还，报曰：两国相击，此一夸今见所长。今臣往，图见雷急，老弱，此必欲剑短，伏其兵以争利。予以为匈奴不可击也。是时，汉兵以夜行，上怒，骂刘敬曰：齐鲁以口舌得官，今乃妄言举吴军。谢系进广武，帝先至平城，兵未尽到，默独纵精兵40万起，围地于白登7日，汉兵中外不得相救降。帝用陈平秘计，使使间后移焉之。恶士谓默独曰：两主不相困，今得汉地而单于，终非能居之也。且汉主亦有神灵，单于察之。默独与王晃、赵立期而黄厉兵不来，以其与汉有谋，乃解围之一角。会天大雾，汉使人往来，匈奴不绝。陈平请令强弩副粮使外乡从截角直出。帝出为豫区，太仆腾公故徐行。至平城，汉大军亦到，胡骑遂解去。汉亦罢兵归，令樊哙指定代地。上至广武，设刘敬曰：吾不用公盐以困平城，吾皆以斩钱使10倍矣。乃封境2000户为关内侯， 号为建信侯。帝南过取逆，曰：壮哉县！吾行天下，独见洛阳与世耳。乃更封陈平为取逆侯，进食之。平从帝征伐，凡6出奇迹，折一封一言。12月，上还，过赵。赵王敖侄子胥礼甚卑，上击句谩骂之。赵相冠高、赵武等皆怒，曰：吾王谗王也。乃说王曰：天下豪杰并起，能者先立。今王视帝甚恭，而帝无礼，请为王杀之。张敖啮其指出血，曰：君何言之物？先人亡国，赖帝得父，得留子孙，秋毫皆帝立也。愿君无复出口。冠高、赵武等皆相谓曰：乃吾等非也。吾王长者，不备德，且吾等亦不辱。今帝辱我王，故欲杀之，何无王为？事成归王，是败独身作耳。匈奴攻代，代王喜弃国自归，设为河阳侯。辛卯，立皇子如意为代王。春2月，上至长安。萧何至未央宫，上见其壮丽，甚怒，谓何曰：天下汹汹，苦战数岁，成败未可知，是何至公事过度也？何曰：天下方未定，故可因以救公事。且夫天子以四海为家，非壮丽无以重威，且无令后世有以嘉也。上说。陈光曰：王者以仁义为利，道德为威，未闻其以公事田服天下也。天下未定，当克己节用以屈民之急，而故以公事为先，岂可谓之之所恶哉？系与卑公事而结为轻公，创业垂统之君，公行节俭以示子孙，其末流犹入于淫靡，况是之以耻乎？乃云无令后世有以嘉，岂不谬哉？至于孝武，足以公事霸蔽天下，未必不由赞侯起之也。上自岳阳喜都长安，出至宗正关，以叙九族。夏4月，地形如洛阳。
Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. More videos available in the playlist collections. Matching ebook included. If you have any suggestions, feel free to let me know.